My name is Adrian Cole, and I never imagined that a single night could upend the order I'd built around my life. The rain came down like rivers of silver, each drop hammering against the polished glass of my Bentley as if nature itself wanted me punished. I lost control, tires skidding on the slick asphalt, and the world became a blur of thunder, blinding headlights, and the metallic shriek of twisted metal. Then impact. Pain shot through my arm. Smoke filled my lungs. The car was a cage of chaos. I struggled to move, my suit soaked and ruined, my world narrowing to the hum of electricity from a snapped streetlight above. And that's when I saw her. A woman in a reflective vest, helmet askew, boots slick with mud, standing in the downpour like she belonged to another story entirely. "Hey, are you alive in there?" she shouted, voice sharp, carrying authority that belonged to no one but herself. Without hesitation, she dove under the crumpled hood, pushing with a force I didn't think one person could summon. Pain mixed with disbelief as her hands gripped mine, hauling me from the twisted metal just before the car caught fire. I tried to protest, to insist she leave, to say she couldn't possibly risk herself for a stranger. She only laughed, a harsh, wind-whipped sound that burned its way into my memory, and replied, "Move, billionaire, or you'll roast before I finish my shift." Her fearlessness made my pulse pound in a way money never could. I tried to ask her name, to thank her properly, but the wind and rain swallowed my words. In a flash, she disappeared into the storm, leaving behind only a helmet that bore the name Maya Bennett. My hand closed around it, and I couldn't stop staring. I was a man who controlled everything, cities, banks, fleets of cars. But I had never felt powerless until that moment. And yet, I didn't feel fear. I felt curiosity. A storm had brought her to me, and just like that, she vanished, leaving me soaked, shaking, and utterly unmoored. I stood there long after she was gone, gripping her helmet like it was a lifeline, wondering who this woman was. A construction worker with hands hardened by labor, eyes that dared you to underestimate her, a sense of bravery that mocked the wealth I thought defined me. She didn't care about my money. She didn't even care that I was a man who could make her life easier. She acted like she didn't know who I was, or maybe like it didn't matter. I drove home that night in silence, the storm tapering off but its echo remaining in my chest. The image of her, determined, drenched, untouchable, haunted my thoughts. I couldn't focus on anything else. Emails, contracts, mergers, all meaningless in comparison to the woman who had stepped into chaos without hesitation. I never thought I'd be captivated by a stranger so completely. And yet, here I was, holding onto a helmet like it was the key to some unseen door. She had no idea the world she'd stepped into, no clue of the man she'd rescued, no thought that her actions would unravel the carefully constructed walls I had built around my life. And that was what terrified me most. She had power in a way I had never known, power that had nothing to do with money, influence, or status. She had courage. She had agency. She had a world all her own. And somehow, in saving me, she had claimed a place in mine without even trying. I still remember the look in her eyes, the way the rain plastered her hair to her face, and the flash of defiance that made my pulse race. She didn't speak of gratitude. She didn't linger for my thanks. She was gone before I could even stammer a single word of appreciation. And I realized, for the first time in my life, that some encounters were bigger than money, bigger than status, bigger than control. Her helmet sat on my desk for days, a silent reminder of everything I couldn't yet understand. I tried to go back to normal life. Meetings blurred into endless negotiations, business dinners stretched into late nights. But every time I looked at her helmet, every time I ran my fingers over the name Maya Bennett, I remembered the feel of her hands on mine, the command in her voice, the way she didn't flinch from danger. Who was she? Why did she risk herself for me? And most importantly, why hadn't she cared about the life I led, the money I owned, or the world I controlled? I didn't know the woman who saved my life that night would soon turn my world upside down. Days turned into weeks, but I couldn't forget her. Maya Bennett's name became a mantra I whispered under my breath during endless board meetings. I tried to focus on the mergers, the quarterly reports, the endless numbers, but her face, drenched in rain, fierce and unyielding, kept intruding. I realized I was searching for her in every unfamiliar crowd, every passing silhouette on the streets of Manhattan. Then, during a meeting about one of my new construction projects in Boston, I heard it, the murmurs, complaints, urgent reports about protests. Women workers claiming unsafe conditions, underpaid, ignored. My stomach sank. And then the bombshell. The leader of the protests, the one challenging my company's practices, was Maya Bennett. The room seemed to blur around me. Maya? The woman who had pulled me from death? The woman who had disappeared like a storm into the night? She was standing up for workers, demanding accountability. I couldn't help but admire her courage. And guilt. A heavy weight settled in my chest as I realized she was right. My own company had ignored these conditions for too long. I couldn't stay in that room. I needed to see her, to understand her, to be near the woman I couldn't stop thinking about. I told myself I would go as a man, not as a billionaire. I needed her to see me as a person, not a title. I needed to know her, and maybe if fate allowed it, to make things right. I found myself driving to the protest site, blending in with the construction workers, wearing a simple jacket and jeans instead of my tailored suits. I walked among them, feeling out of place but strangely grounded. The city smelled like concrete and sweat and ambition, not like the polished world of boardrooms and glass towers I usually inhabited. And there she was, Maya, commanding attention without trying, directing workers, confronting supervisors, standing with her arms crossed, a mixture of fire and fatigue in her eyes. I wanted to call out her name, but I stayed silent, watching her work, trying to memorize every movement, every flicker of emotion. When our eyes met briefly, I felt a jolt. Recognition. But she didn't run. She didn't call security. Instead, she raised an eyebrow as if silently asking, "Who are you to watch me?" I had to remind myself not to reveal everything. Not yet. The guilt gnawed at me. My company had allowed conditions like this, and her fight was just and righteous. Admiration battled with self-reproach. I wanted to step in, offer help, but she didn't need my money or my influence. What she needed was justice. And maybe somewhere in my heart, I realized I needed her. I spent the day helping quietly, fixing minor things, moving debris, carrying tools. Workers glanced at me, puzzled by the sudden stranger lending a hand. Maya noticed me, of course, her eyes sharp and unflinching. She approached, hands on her hips. "You think this is a game? That showing up makes a difference?" she asked, voice edged with distrust. I just want to help," I said, trying to match her intensity. She shook her head. "No, you don't understand. You don't know what it's like to fight for respect every single day." And she was right. I didn't. Not then. But I was willing to learn. I had to. Watching her lead, seeing the respect she commanded, feeling the undeniable pull between us. It was maddening. The memory of her saving me, her courage and indifference to my wealth, collided with the reality of who she was now. A fighter, a protector, a force I couldn't ignore. As the sun set behind the skeletal structure of my own company's building, I realized something profound. Fate had given me a second chance to meet her. Not as a client, not as a billionaire, but as someone willing to meet her world on her terms. The storm that night hadn't just saved my life. It had set a chain of events into motion I could no longer control. I didn't know if she would ever forgive the system I represented, the board I led, or even me. But I couldn't let her go, not again. Maya Bennett was more than a fleeting memory. She was a revelation. And for the first time in years, I felt powerless, but in the most exhilarating, terrifying way. I decided then, firmly, that I would return. Not as Adrian Cole, the billionaire tycoon, but as a man willing to understand, willing to risk, willing to step fully into the life she fought for. I needed to see her again. Needed to know her strength, her convictions, and maybe, just maybe, to earn a place in the world she was building from nothing. Because the woman who had saved my life wasn't just unforgettable. She had become unavoidable. And I had no choice but to follow where she led. Moral lesson. True courage transcends wealth. Respect is earned through deeds. And life's storms often guide us to the people who truly shape our hearts. I returned the next morning, this time fully determined to experience her world. I left my tailored suits at home, opting for worn jeans, a faded hoodie, and steel-toed boots. The city was quieter than Manhattan, the air thick with dust, concrete, and determination. The site was alive with clanging metal, shouting foremen, and the rhythm of labor. And there she was, Maya Bennett, clipboard in hand, guiding her team with an authority that could command armies. She noticed me immediately. "You again," she snapped, her voice sharp like flint. "You can't just wander in here, mister. This isn't some charity gala." Her gaze was unflinching, piercing, as if she could see through every mask I'd ever worn. "I'm not here to cause trouble," I said, raising my hands, trying to convey sincerity. "I just want to help." Her laugh was short, disbelieving. "Help? You think you can fix years of neglect by showing up in jeans. She folded her arms, staring me down. I've seen men like you. They promise, they flaunt their money, and they walk away. Not me. Her words cut deeper than any boardroom critique ever could. I swallowed hard, trying to remember why I was here. She didn't know who I really was yet, and that was exactly how I wanted it, for now. I spent the day working alongside her team, lifting beams, carrying bags of cement, and removing debris. The workers glanced at me with a mix of confusion and amusement. Here was a man obviously not used to labor, yet moving with a determination that suggested he wasn't entirely ignorant. Maya's eyes followed my every move, calculating, assessing. I could feel her skepticism like a weight on my chest. Finally, after hours under the sun and dust, she called me over. "Why are you really here?" she demanded. "Not because you like seeing people struggle, I hope." Her tone was accusatory, but curiosity laced through it. "I'm looking for you," I admitted. "You saved my life. I can't stop thinking about it. About you." Her eyes widened slightly, recognition dawning. "Wait, you're him," she said softly, voice catching. "The night, the crash, my hands were, you're Adrian Cole." I nodded, feeling exposed under her gaze. "Yes, but I'm not here as the billionaire. I'm here as a man who owes you everything." The tension between us was palpable, a mixture of anger, attraction, and mistrust. I could see her wrestling with the truth. The man she had saved was also the head of the company responsible for the very injustice she was fighting. "You think because you're rich, you can fix everything with money. Not this time," she said, her words sharp but tinged with something unspoken, maybe hope, maybe caution. I wanted to argue, to insist that I could make things right, but I realized she didn't want arguments. She wanted action. She wanted someone who could stand beside her, not above her. The day wore on, and I stayed, moving, working, breathing in the rhythm of her world. We clashed repeatedly, over methods, over priorities, over my inexperience, but with every clash, a spark ignited. Frustration mingled with fascination. I admired her fierceness, her uncompromising moral compass. She respected nothing that didn't earn it, including me. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in bruised purples and oranges, I caught her off guard. I will do whatever it takes to make this right. Not because I'm rich, but because I can't bear the thought of being responsible for harm." She paused, studying me, and for a moment, the fire in her eyes softened. "But pride is not easily set aside." "We'll see," she said, and turned back to the site, leaving me with the quiet weight of her doubt and the even heavier pull of my heart. Then, as if fate loved to toy with me, disaster struck. A scaffold, poorly secured by contractors who didn't heed Maya's warnings, collapsed. Workers screamed. Dust filled the air. And for the first time, I couldn't buy my way out of the consequences. I rushed forward, adrenaline surging, heart hammering. Maya's shouts cut through the chaos. I saw her duck to protect a young apprentice, her body colliding with debris. Fear gripped me, not just for her, but for the realization that my money, my influence, my empire could not undo what was happening right now. I ran, lifted, pulled, shouted. And I saw it clearly. The woman who had captivated me, terrified me, challenged me, she was human. Vulnerable. And everything about me wanted to protect her. For the first time, worlds didn't just collide, they shattered. My wealth, my control, my confidence in being able to fix everything. It all crumbled in the dust and noise of a construction site that no amount of money could tame. And I knew then that if I wanted her, I had to prove I could stand beside her, not above her, in every storm, in every chaos, in every heartbreak yet to come. I never imagined how quickly everything I had built could collapse. 1 week after the scaffold collapse, I learned the truth. My own board had cut corners, ignored safety protocols, and put lives at risk, all to save money. Maya's brother, a young worker named Liam, had been injured in the accident. My chest tightened at the thought that my empire, my decisions, even my negligence indirectly, had caused someone I cared about to suffer. I called an emergency board meeting, my voice trembling with anger I'd never shown in a room full of executives. "You betrayed the trust not just of the workers, but of every person depending on this company. I want names, actions, everything. And I will make it public," I said. No hesitation, no excuses. Just truth. When the revelations hit the press, I watched the world I had known crumble. Billion-dollar deals evaporated, investors withdrew, and my status as a billionaire, something I had always defined myself by, vanished. I didn't fight to save it. Not anymore. Because now my focus was on rebuilding. on making right what I had allowed to go wrong. I showed up at the construction site in old jeans and a faded hoodie, hands blistered, nails blackened by work. Workers stared at me, incredulous. "What's he doing here?" I heard whispers, laughter. I didn't flinch. I grabbed a hammer, lifted beams, swept debris, and dug trenches. Every motion reminded me of Maya, of the strength she had shown me, of the courage I wanted to mirror. She appeared after hours of toil, the last worker leaving the site, her expression guarded. She froze when she saw me. "Adrian, you're actually doing it," she said softly, disbelief in her voice. "Not hiding behind suits, not writing checks, doing it yourself." I approached slowly, hands rough, sleeves damp with sweat. "I lost billions trying to fix what my money broke. But I'd do it again for you," I said, voice low, sincere. I didn't offer apologies because I knew words alone weren't enough. Every swing of my hammer, every bag of cement I carried, was my apology in action. Maya studied me for a long time, the wind tugging at her hair, dust settling on our faces. I thought she would mock me, laugh at the irony of a man who once owned skyscrapers reduced to manual labor. But instead, I saw something different in her eyes, humility, recognition, and perhaps the first hint of trust. The workers continued their work around us, some skeptical, some quietly amused. But Maya walked toward me, clipboard in hand, and for the first time, she didn't speak with fire. She spoke softly. "You're not just rich," she said. "You're real." It struck me in a way I had never expected. Real. Not defined by money, status, or power, but by sweat, effort, and genuine care. For the first time, I felt grounded in a truth larger than profit margins or market share. She walked away after that, tears glinting in the fading light, leaving me with a mixture of hope and heartache. Could she forgive me fully? Could she see the man I was beneath the billionaire facade? I didn't know. All I knew was that I would not leave her world. I would remain working, learning, rebuilding, not for recognition, not for redemption, but because I had come to care too much to walk away. In the quiet moments after the site cleared, I stood alone, hands dirty, back aching, and I thought about what love meant. Not grand gestures or extravagant gifts, but sacrifice, humility, and persistence. And for the first time in my life, I understood that the richest man in the world could be the poorest in spirit if he ignored the things that truly mattered. I committed then, fully and irrevocably, to be a man worthy of standing beside Maya, not above her. I didn't know if she would forgive me completely, but I knew I had to prove that my intentions were more than words, more than money, more than fleeting impulse. This was about building something real, something enduring, something that could survive storms, neglect, and human frailty. Because if I could earn her trust, even a little, if I could show her I was willing to risk everything to stand beside her, then maybe, just maybe, we could start something together. Months passed, and I learned the rhythm of Maya's world. The sound of drills, the grit of concrete under fingernails, the stubbornness of steel beams that refused to bend. I watched from the sidelines, quietly supporting her efforts to launch the Rebuild Foundation, her dream project for safer, fairer construction sites and training programs for young workers. I invested discreetly, ensuring she had resources without knowing it came from me. Pride was hers. Influence was mine, silent and unobtrusive. The morning of the foundation's launch arrived with a crisp chill. Workers bustled about, placing banners, checking equipment, and greeting volunteers. Maya moved with effortless authority, clipboard in hand, directing every detail, a queen in a kingdom of scaffolding and sweat. I stayed at the back, letting her world shine without intrusion. And then she noticed me. Her eyes caught mine for a fraction of a second. A smile flickered, soft, genuine, and full of warmth. She walked toward me, every step confident, yet there was something unspoken in her gaze, a forgiveness, an acknowledgement, a recognition of the effort I had made to understand her world, her values. "I see you've been busy," she said, voice gentle. "Not just with the foundation, I mean with proving your worth a second glance." I smiled, feeling my chest tighten with emotion. "I've learned a lot. About responsibility, about sacrifice, about what it truly means to build, not just structures, but trust." She reached into her bag and handed me a helmet. I took it, noticing the engraving, Builder of Hearts. My heart thudded in my chest, a quiet acknowledgement that we were no longer worlds apart. That respect, trust, and shared effort had created a bridge far stronger than steel. "So I work for you now?" I asked, a teasing note in my voice, but my eyes searched hers for meaning. "No," she said, smiling. "We build together." The words struck me with the clarity of sunlight through storm clouds. Not subordinate, not dependent, not a transaction. Partnership. Equality. Love grounded in shared purpose, respect, and understanding. A love that had grown not from wealth or power, but from courage, vulnerability, and perseverance. I thought back to that stormy night, when she had saved me with no thought for my fortune or status. Back then, I had been captivated by her bravery. Now I was humbled by her vision. Maya Bennett had taught me that the greatest structures we build are not buildings or empires. They are lives, trust, and hearts intertwined with effort and care. As the launch commenced, volunteers cheering, machines humming, and banners waving in the morning sun, I stood beside her. Not as a man to be adored, not as a billionaire to be envied, but as a partner in every sense. We surveyed the sight side by side, hands calloused, faces streaked with dust and determination. And I knew that this moment, this life we were creating, was more valuable than anything I had ever owned. The crowd applauded, cameras clicked, and yet all I could focus on was her. Maya, fierce, compassionate, and unyielding. She turned to me once more, eyes bright, a single nod of affirmation passing between us. No words could capture it all, yet in that moment, silence was enough. We had built something beyond money, beyond status, beyond ego. We had built a foundation of love. I reflected silently on the journey, on the night that changed everything, on the mistakes I had made, on the humility I had earned. I realized that the world I had once dominated with wealth alone now felt small compared to the life we were creating together. She had shown me that love isn't bought, and respect isn't demanded. Both are earned through action, sacrifice, and courage. And standing there, amidst concrete and scaffolding, surrounded by people whose lives she had touched and whose futures she had secured, I understood the truest wealth I would ever possess. It wasn't money. It wasn't power. It was her trust, her forgiveness, and the privilege of building a life together. I had once owned cities, yachts, and skyscrapers. Now I had something infinitely greater. A woman with calloused hands, unwavering determination, and a heart that had taught me what it truly means to build a home. Together, we would shape lives, structures, and dreams brick by brick, heartbeat by heartbeat. And as the sun climbed higher, illuminating the rebuild foundation sign, I placed my hand lightly on hers. We didn't need grand declarations. Our actions, our sweat, our shared triumphs spoke louder than any words could. Maya Bennett had changed everything, and in doing so, she had given me the most precious gift of all, the chance to love and to be loved on equal ground,